Right. Good evening, Luis. Can you hear me?
Yes po, sir.
Thank you. Right. For this evening, we will cover the topic of seismic refraction. Okay. Right. Seismic refraction exploits of course, the principle of critical refraction. Okay. Right. Whenever you whenever you create or whenever you generate a seismic energy. Okay, so let's say you hammer this point. Now, what's gonna happen with the seismic waves is that they will propagate in all directions. Okay, okay. So you can imagine them as like a pebble in a pool. The wave will be propagating in all directions. And you can imagine the waves to be represented by rays, okay, traveling at a certain direction, and a portion of the seismic energy, okay, some of them will actually hit, okay, as it travels from the first layer. It will hit the second layer at what we call the critical angle, okay, or the angle of critical refraction. And once it hits this angle at the second layer, this ray will now travel parallel along the boundary of your layer 1 and layer 2. Okay? And one important feature of that is that this ray will now travel at the velocity of layer 2. Okay? Right? Let me skip some slides. Okay. And I think just another key concept here is the concept of wavelets. Okay? As per the Huygens principle, okay, as a wave or a seismic wave or a seismic ray travels, each point, okay, along a material acts like a point source of waves. So this is, sorry, this is best illustrated by this animation. Okay, okay. So what's happening here is that as the wave is traveling in this direction, it is continuously emitting even more. It's acting as a point source. Okay, so as it travels, it emits waves. Okay, and as it progresses to another point, it emits even more waves. Okay. So as waves move, they also scatter, okay, in every position they occupy. Okay. Okay. And one implication of that here, okay, as you can see here in this example, you have two people, okay, and there is a boundary between them. Okay. And if you're gonna imagine seismic waves as traveling simply in straight directions, okay, uh, physically it's impossible for this Dr. Kate to actually hear, okay, what's here from the person below her. Okay. Okay. However, due to the Huygens principle, seismic waves as they travel, they actually act as point sources. So once the seismic wave encounters this interface, it can actually diffuse. Okay? in all directions, enabling Dr. Kate to actually hear this person below her. Okay. Okay. So you can see here how the wavelets actually sort of propagate. It can technically turn around corners, okay, due to its propagation as each point occupied by the wave acts as a point source. Okay. Okay. Now, when you're doing seismic refraction survey, you have to be aware of the three main paths, okay, taken by the seismic energy. Okay. So if this is your point source or shock point where you either detonate an explosive or strike a sledgehammer, okay, one of the rays which can propagate from this point is what we call the direct ray. Okay? And this ray, okay, as the name implies, it simply travels along the first layer, okay? And it travels horizontally and directly into the receiver or the geophone, which is recording the seismic waves. You also have your reflected ray, okay, which at some point will bounce off from the interface between the first layer and the subsequent layer and reflects into the position of the receiver. And finally, you have your refracted ray, right? As I mentioned earlier, some of the rays will actually hit the second layer at the critical angle of refraction or your I sub C. And when this happens, your seismic ray will travel along layer 2, okay, horizontally on the boundary. And then, okay, it can eventually, as it travels, it continuously propagates, okay, and acts as a point source. So it's continuously emitting even more rays, okay, until one of its emitted rays return back to the receiver or reach the receiver, sorry. Okay. So that's how your waves actually travel. And we have here the concept of we have here the time distance diagram or the TX diagram, meaning time in the y-axis and distance in the x-axis. Okay. And the distance here represents the position or the location of your geophones. Okay. Normally in a typical seismic refraction survey, you might have around 24 geophones recording at different positions. Okay. Normally, you will have one geophone that's closest to the source, to the point, to the seismic source, and then you just increment, okay, their positions by a fixed distance. So let's say 1 meter, 2 meter, 3 meters, 4 meters until you are able to put 24 geophones in the field. Okay. Okay. And one important concept here is that since this is time versus distance, if you're gonna have a line, okay, and you take the slope of the line, right? So the slope of a line is just rise over run. where your rise is your time and your run is your distance. So that means this is t over distance. Okay. And if you're gonna play around with this value, this is actually just the inverse of distance over time, which in turn is just your velocity. Okay. So this means that the slope of lines in the time distance diagram are simply inverse of velocities. And we also call this value, we also call this slope the value called slowness. Okay. So it simply means that the steeper the slope, the slower is the wave. Okay. The more gentle the slope, the faster the wave, because when you have a very gentle slope, it means it can travel a lot of distance with minimal amount of time. Right? And let's see conceptually how do the three different seismic rays plot in a time distance diagram. First is the direct ray, so it's just directly traveling along the first layer. Okay. So you can expect it to just it will be easily or it will be uniformly encountered by the subsequent geophones. Okay. And if you're gonna plot its arrival times in the geophones, it's gonna be linear because it's traveling in just a one velocity. Okay. It's traveling at a constant velocity at the velocity of layer one. So the slope will be just one slope. Okay. And it's also gonna start at 0, 0 because the ray simply starts at the source. Okay. So it's coming from a single position or from a single source. Now, let's talk about the refracted ray, which is a bit more tricky. This is the refracted ray. Okay. So I'm drawing it as a dashed line because refracted rays are normally not visible in the first few parts of the time distance diagram because the first arrivals it's overpowered by the reflected rays which come first, and then after a certain distance, okay, after a certain distance the refracted rays, okay, will eventually be faster than your reflected and your direct ray. Okay. Okay, so the refracted ray is a straight line because it mostly travels just along the boundary of layer 2. Okay. Okay, wait a minute. Okay, sorry. Right, let's resume. Right. So second question is, why does the refracted ray not start at the origin? The answer to that is that the refracted ray always has to travel first at the first layer and then again travel horizontally along the same layer and then travel back again across the first layer. Okay. Therefore, it always needs to travel a certain fixed amount of distance, okay, going up and going down before it can travel any distance horizontally. So therefore, it always needs to consume a certain amount of time going up and going down before it can cover any distance. Okay. And that's also the reason why the refracted ray is a straight line, simply because for any distance, any horizontal distance which the refracted ray has to cover, it always needs to travel up and travel down at a fixed amount of distance. Okay. So this up and down distance doesn't change, okay, regardless of how far it will travel. If it's gonna travel maybe 1 meter, it still needs to travel up and down. If it's gonna travel 5 kilometers, it still needs to travel this up and down distance. Okay. Another question is, why does a reflected ray start at the origin? Okay. Uh, Physically, it's possible for the reflected ray to simply bounce vertically downward and then bounce back again towards the receiver if there's any receiver in this location of the source. Okay. Therefore, theoretically, the reflected ray can start at the origin. Okay. Okay. And I think last question is, why is the reflected ray asymptotic with the direct ray? Okay. The answer to that is that the reflected ray, okay, it always has to reflect at the boundary, okay, and as it travels a very, very long distance, it eventually, uh, this vertical distance traveled by the reflected ray eventually becomes negligible as you travel a very, very long distance. Therefore, at long distances, the reflected ray will be asymptotic with the direct ray. Okay? They sort of merge in terms of velocity at very long distances. Right? The direct ray is simply a linear velocity. Okay? It's quite straightforward. The distance is simply divided by the velocity of the direct ray. Okay, so it has a linear plot. This one is the reflected ray. Okay, so it's never the first arrival because it always has to travel up and down. Okay, and it has a curved path on the TX diagram because as it travel longer and longer distances, it actually becomes more efficient. Okay, so it actually becomes faster as it travels longer distances. Okay, because this vertical component of its travel path becomes negligible. Okay. For the reflected ray, the y-intercept of the time, okay, or this one, this is the y-intercept of the reflected ray. This one actually gives you an information on the thickness of the first layer. Okay. Now, the refracted ray, okay, it always plots as a linear path because, again, it always travels at a constant velocity, but it has to first go up and then go down later on. Now, the refracted ray is potentially the fastest ray among the three because it travels along the second layer, which is always a faster layer because you only get refraction, which can return the waves when you have a faster velocity, right? And the refracted ray always arrives only after what you call the critical distance. Okay? The critical distance is where you don't get refracted rays. Okay? It's the minimum distance where you only get direct and reflected rays. Okay? So the refraction always needs to cover a minimum amount of distance because of the critical angle of refraction. Okay. So it only shows up, okay, only after the critical distance. Okay. Now we were talking initially about the term first arrival. So this is another important concept in seismic refraction. Okay. Again, this is the distance of the time distance diagram, and this is the time. Okay. And this is normally your time zero in your time distance diagram. So obviously, this first arrivals, of course, are the first batches of disturbances which are perceived by the seismic survey. Okay. So if you're gonna do a first arrival, you're gonna look at the first arrivals. Okay. These are your first arrivals. At the start, it's gonna be the direct rays, and then after a certain distance, it's gonna be your refracted rays. Okay. So we are interested in first arrivals because after the first arrivals, the waves tend to get mixed up. Okay. It's really hard to read or interpret a seismic section after the first arrivals get through. Okay. So in seismic refraction, we are only interested in the first arrivals. Okay. Okay. So these ones, right? TX diagram. How do we make the TX diagram? So first we start with your seismic section. Okay, of course, a seismic section technically is also a TX diagram because it's simply a plot also of time versus distance. Now, the next step is to pick out all the first arrivals. Okay. So again, this is your zero time. And what we usually do is we simply look for the first breaks in the plot. Okay. So normally the first breaks are the first arrivals of your seismic energy. So you pick them, and then after that you plot them on a clean sheet of paper or maybe a scatter plot. Okay. And from there we can interpret the velocity and the thickness of the layers in the subsurface. And that's what we're gonna do in the exercise tutorial later on. Okay, so the slope, the velocity of line segment, each line segment here represents a layer. Okay, so the direct ray represents the layer one. Okay, so the direct ray travels at the velocity of layer one, and the velocity of layer one is simply the inverse slope of this line segment. And then the second line segment in the TX diagram is your first refracted ray, and its velocity is gonna be equal to the inverse slope of this line segment. Okay. So if you find subsequent line segments, okay, for example, you find another line segment, this is gonna be your second refracted layer or layer three. Okay. And its velocity again is gonna be equal to its inverse of its slope. Okay. There are lots of nuances and considerations in seismic refraction. I'm gonna skip them for now. Okay. It's also discussed in the lecture I uploaded earlier last week. Okay. So I'm just gonna jump into the exercise tutorial. Okay. So for the exercise, I provided a document. This is an old geophysics document way back in 2018. Sorry. And yeah, again, this is not my original work. It's from Professor Martin Unsworth from University of Alberta. You can find his website there. Okay. And for our course, you only need to solve or work on the first problem, the problem on horizontal layers. Sorry, this one. Okay, I won't be requiring you to solve the second problem on dipping layers. Okay, it's gonna be, okay, I think the horizontal layers will give you sufficient background and basic knowledge on seismic refraction interpretation, right? So for the problem for this exercise, you need to work on this spreadsheet lab for 224 2005 refraction horizontal. It's uploaded in the Blackboard. Okay. Okay. And of course, I will be providing today a tutorial on how to calculate or analyze a horizontal layer refraction survey. This one, right? This is also uploaded in Blackboard, by the way, the tutorial file. Okay, so again, let's discuss the first arrivals. These are the first disturbances or first wiggles recorded per distance, representing the first arrival of the seismic energy, right? So if this is your seismic section, the first arrivals, of course, are gonna be the first batches of disturbances recorded by the geophones. Okay, okay, so it's the first sign of disturbance recorded by each geophone. Okay. And we normally pick this manually. Okay, there are software methods to automate the picking, but it's in practice, I've tried this before. It's really it's a complicated process, and sometimes it's better to do it manually, okay, because the algorithms can mess up the picking and interpretation process, right? So once you've picked all the first arrivals from your seismic section, okay, you're now ready to interpret the velocities and layers and the thicknesses of your subsurface, right? So this data represents the first picks or the first arrivals manually picked from the seismic section. And as you can see, it's a pair of distance and time data. Okay, so obviously in a seismic section, you have your time and your distance. Okay. So each point here is will have a pair of time and distance values. And once you tabulate them, this will be the end product, right? So again, I'm gonna reiterate the key goals in this process. We have to determine the velocities of the layers, and we also have to determine the thicknesses of the layers. Okay. So remember, the time distance diagram is a time versus distance. So the slope of your line or the inverse of the slope is simply your velocity. Okay. Now, solving for the thickness is actually a bit more tedious to do. I'm gonna show you later. So the first step is to plot the first arrivals in a time distance format. So you can also do it conveniently using a scatter plot. So just highlight this data, insert a scatter plot, okay, and then you're gonna get the same. You're gonna get the same output as above, right? Next step is to trace the trend of the first arrivals. Okay. So in here, I have traced I have traced this trend of this plot. So you can see I'm interpreting two segments here. Sorry, I'm interpreting three segments in here. Okay. You have this segment, which is pretty steep. And then you have a second segment, which is slightly more gentle. And finally, you have a third segment, which is even more gently sloping. Okay. So this simply means that at first you have a slow velocity seismic ray. This is your direct ray. This slightly gentler pattern is probably from your first refraction or from your second layer. And this even more gentler set of first arrivals is probably from your second refraction or from your third layer. Okay? So I also placed some tiny dividing lines so that I can easily segregate them later on once I analyze them. Okay, and you can also put some data labels so that you can easily determine which data point is the start of which segment. The third step is to separate the data by the segment you identified. Okay? If you will notice, the first segment consists of three data points. Okay? And accordingly, I have separated the first three data points, okay, into a separate table. And then after that, the second segment will consist of multiple data points up to the value of time equal to 0.02625 seconds. Okay. Okay. So if you're gonna look, you have actually two values of 0.02625. And if you're gonna look at the chart, you have actually these two dots have a value of have an equal time value. Okay, but I think this dot belongs around the distance of 135 meters. Okay. So I have all the three segments segregated, okay, in terms of their data points, okay. And from there you can just create separate scatter plots. Okay, for example, this one, I'm gonna highlight this one. Insert scatter plot. So I now have a time distance diagram of the first segment. And the next thing you can do here is you simply need to add a trend line and make sure you show the equation, okay, so that you can determine right away the slope of the line segment. Okay, so the slope here is 0.0004. Okay, so to get the velocity, you simply need to get the inverse of that. 1 divided by 0.0004. And that's gonna be 2,500 meters per second velocity. Okay. Right? So I'm just gonna do that for all the segments. Okay. Segment one or layer one, segment two, layer two, and segment three or layer three. Okay. Now the next step after that is to simply calculate their velocities. You simply need to read their slopes. Okay? So this is the slope, right? So this is the form of y is equal to mx plus b. So y is equal to m slope and then x plus your b is your y-intercept. Okay, so this is your slope, 0.0004 for layer 1. For layer 2, you have 0.0002, okay, which is equal to which has a velocity of 5,000 meters per second. And finally, for layer 3, you have a slope of 5, okay, exponential to the fifth power. So that's 0.00005. Okay, four zeros before the 5. And that layer has a velocity of 20,000 meters per second. Now, the next step is to calculate their critical angles of refraction. Okay. So as I have shown you earlier, refracted rays, okay, as they travel from their source, they always need to travel down to the refracted layer and then later undergo refraction, or they travel along that layer horizontally and then they go up again. And this up and down motion always happens at the critical angle of refraction. Okay. So we need to determine the critical angles of refraction between the interfaces. So between layer 1 and layer 2, between layer 1 and layer 3, and between layer 2 and layer 3. Okay. And fortunately, we already have this equation here below. Okay. You have this equation. Sine critical angle 1, 3 over V1 is equal to sine 2, 3 over V2, and it's equal to sine 90 over V3. So you don't need to rearrange those equations anymore. I've already rearranged them here. Okay, so you can calculate right away the critical angle for layer 1, 2. It's simply equal to arc sine V1 divided by V2 and then multiply it by sine 90 degrees. Now, sine 90 degrees is actually, I'm gonna show you, it's not really an important term here because sine 90 degrees is simply equal to 1. Okay? But anyway, just for the sake of following the formula, I have included this term. Okay? So if you're gonna calculate those angles, okay? Okay. So for example, the critical angle of refraction between layer 1 and layer 2 is equal to the arc sine of velocity 1 divided by velocity 2, okay, multiplied by radians 90. Okay, so be careful with Excel because the sine, arc sine, and all the trigonometric functions in Excel use radians as an input angle. So if you will notice in this formula, for the sine function, I had to convert the 90-degree angle into radians. And then for the arcsine function, this one returns an angle, and I had to convert the result of the arcsine, which is radians, into degrees. Okay, so these are the critical angles of refraction, okay, determined for these interfaces. And then I think almost the final step is to calculate the layer thicknesses. For layer 1, you can refer to this equation. Okay, y-intercept of the second line segment is equal to 2 times z1, or the thickness of the first layer, times cosine the critical angle of refraction for layer 1 and 2, divided by the velocity of the first layer. Okay. So again, I have already rearranged that equation so that you can directly calculate for the thickness of layer 1, or Z1. And that's simply equal to the T2, or the y-intercept of the second line, multiplied by the velocity of the first layer, and then divided by the 2 multiplied by the quantity of the cosine of the critical angle of refraction between layer 1 and 2. Okay, so obviously this is the probably one of the most mathematically intensive exercise. So in this in here, I simply inputted the y-intercept of the second line segment. It's 0.0048. So let me show you the plot. Okay. So this is the y-intercept of the second layer, or the second segment, or the T2. So this is your T2. Okay. Right. So from there, you can now readily calculate the thickness of the first layer. So it's simply equal to T2 multiplied by the velocity of layer 1, 2,500, and then divided by the cosine of the radians of the critical angular refraction between layer 1 and layer 2. Okay. And the resulting thickness is 6.9 meters. Okay. And then for the second layer, this is a lot more complicated. For the second layer, the thickness of layer 2, or Z2. Okay, so note this is the equation for this is the pertinent equation for calculating the thickness of layer 2. So this is the variable that we want, Z2. So what you're gonna do here, you need to transfer this term into this other side, and then the new term will be multiplied by V2, and then these remaining terms will be also transferred to the other side. And this is gonna be the resulting equation. Okay? So had to I had to represent the long terms by what you call term 1, so to simplify the equation. So term 1 here is a variable that's equal to the term 2 times z1 times cosine of the critical angle 1,3 divided by v1. So that's term 1. And then term 2 is equal to the value of 2 times cosine critical angle 2,3. Okay? And the final equation for calculating the thickness of layer 2 is equal to y-intercept of the third segment minus term 1, this one, minus this value, and then multiplied by the velocity of the second layer, and then divided by term 2. So this is your term 2. Okay? So I'm not a fan of using very, very long equations, so I had to split the equation into multiple terms. Okay. So accordingly, I have here formula. You have here term one, and I have here the formula for calculating term one. So it's 2 times the thickness, okay, thickness of layer one multiplied by the cosine of your critical angle of refraction between layer one and layer three, and then divided by velocity of layer one. And similarly for term two, this is equal to 2 times cosine of the angle, 2 times cosine of the angle of critical refraction between layer 2 and layer 3. Okay? So once you manipulate term 1 and term 2, you're gonna get this thickness that's 67 meters, 67.5 meters thickness. Right? Now let's wrap up the results. So the final task is to draw the model seismic section. So normally this has to be done in scale, especially for actual surveys where you are interested in the actual thicknesses of your subsurface. But for this exercise, to make the image manageable, I did not draw it to scale. Okay. So for your this is gonna be your layer one. It has a velocity or a P wave velocity. So again, for seismic reflection, we are working with the compression wave velocities or the primary wave velocities. So the velocity of layer one is 2,500 meters per second, and the thickness, this thickness is 6.9 meters. And then layer two is or has a velocity of 5,000 meters per second, and it has a thickness. It's really thick. It's 67.5 meters thickness. And finally, we have the third layer. It has a velocity of 20,000 meters per second. And however, we don't know the thickness of the third layer because you didn't get a refraction for the fourth layer. Okay? So we don't know the thickness of the third layer. Right? So that's gonna be the tutorial for the exercise, and you simply have to just do this process for the exercise. Okay. So you just need to work on a different data set. Okay, that's all, and that's gonna be your exercise for seismic refraction.